Hello, I'm your everyday average Jonathan. Join me this week while I turn this everyday rasp into this, a Japanese Kiridashi. Hello, I'm your everyday average Jonathan. I'm an ordinary guy with ordinary tools making extraordinary items. I am a self-taught craftsman. I'm an amateur blacksmith and a novice woodworker. I have no professional training and no professional tools. I have a basic set of tools that I've cobbled together over the years, and admittedly, I am blessed with a shop to use them in. But each week, I take you on a new build project for me. I show you my process, I show you my perspective. I don't edit out any of my aha moments. I don't edit out any of my mistakes. My goal is simple. It's to demonstrate that anyone with a basic set of tools, a lot of hard-won knowledge, a lot of curiosity, lots of mistakes, can also begin to create things that you might have thought otherwise were out of reach for you, things that are too fantastical, too difficult, or too extravagant perhaps. The items that I build each week are whimsical in nature, fantastical, echoing times of a forgotten yore, if you will. Items like weapons and armor, tools and implements, novelties, practical items that I use on my ranch here in Colorado. This week, I will be making something that I've made before. It is called the Japanese Kiridashi. It's an interesting, enigmatic, curious item for me. In a sense, it might have been the Japanese multi-tool of the day. Come with me for this build. It's going to be a great one. We're already in the shop, so let's get started. All right, so the Japanese Kiridashi, I said that to me it's a curious, enigmatic item. The reason I say that is that the implement, the tool, the Japanese Kiridashi, goes back thousands of years. The full name is Kiridashi Kogatana. I'm probably not saying that right at all, but it means something along the lines of small blade used for carving or small knife used for carving. The Kiridashi was the original multi-tool or utility knife of the day. Historically speaking, it was used primarily for carving wood. It was a chisel, but I also saw that it was used for cutting hair, maybe for shaving. Certainly they could be razor sharp. Cutting cords, sharpening pencils, all of those sorts of things. There was several accounts of them being used by school children to carry in their bags to school or carry in their pack to school and use it to sharpen their pencils with. I'd like to think that was true because that's just cute. The thing that draws me to a Kiridashi, which is very fascinating, and this is not a Kiridashi, this is just a piece of metal, but it illustrates a point, which, no pun intended, which you'll see me get to, and that is this. As with many things in Japanese culture, it is a dead simple instrument. It is just a piece of metal, a bar, if you will, with a chisel grind to the edge. What that means is one side of it is ground down to a point, the other side is flat. That's a chisel grind. That's what Kiridashis are used. It's the most simple way to make an edge and to keep an edge. And if you think about it, the common farmer, the common peasant at the time could have a piece of metal, could be iron, could be bronze, could be copper, whatever they had at the time. They could have a piece of metal about this size. They would go find a rock or a grindstone and then just start to do this with the piece of metal. And over time, you're gonna get that chisel grind out. What I find really interesting about researching the Kiridashi is that if you just do an internet search for Kiridashi, you're gonna find hundreds upon hundreds of images of modern day representations of this implement, from companies who make them to small knife makers to people's renditions just like mine. What's very fascinating is I spent a lot of time researching this, looking for historical accounts, historical pictures, meaning artifacts that were kept in museums of Kiridashi. I did not find a single one. Doesn't mean they didn't exist, it just means that for some reason they weren't interesting enough perhaps, or valuable enough perhaps, to be kept in a museum. I'm sure that there are iterations that I missed that are very old, but I spent a lot of time looking. Furthermore, it's also really fascinating that oftentimes when I'm researching something and I want to have visuals, pictures to share with you to show what I'm talking about, I can go on Wikipedia and I can find pictures that I don't have to worry about copyrights as long as I attribute the author. There is no Wikipedia page for the Kiridashi. There is none, zero. Going even a step further, If I can't find non-copyrighted images for my content to show to you, the viewer, then what I'll use is maybe 6 or 7 AI image generators. And I'll put in the prompts, Japanese Kiridashi, Japanese chisel, and it'll spit out AI generated images that are non-copyrighted that I can use. I could not get, no matter what combination of words I used, and I tried hundreds of times, I could not get any of the AI generators to actually send me an image of what a Kiridashi actually is and what it looks like. Not one, until the very last one I tried. I was throwing so many prompts, spent hours doing this actually. I found one, which I will show you now, that is acceptable for an AI generated Kiridashi image. It is such a incredibly ubiquitous, common item for ancient times and even up in today. For it not to have a place on Wikipedia or historical museum pieces that I can find, that we can readily see, I find that really interesting and really curious. The other last piece of history which is interesting to share is throughout the ancient times all the way up into modern times, really, there were different dynasties and different rulers that some would disallow a peasant or a common person to carry a weapon, a sword, a wakizashi, a katana. And then there would be other areas in Japanese history where a different ruler would allow for it. You may hear sometimes people say, oh, the commoner in Japan was not allowed to carry a sword. That was not universally true. There were different time periods where they could. But a implement, a tool like the Kiridashi, undoubtedly at times was used as a weapon, no question about it, but any commoner could have it. It would be like us carrying around a pocket knife, a multi-tool, or a utility knife today. Anyhow, thank you for joining me on that little excursion. Without further ado, let's get to the build. Well, I kept the template from the last time I made a Kiridashi, and here is that rasp that I've had for a very long time. I hit this rasp with everything under the sun. A stone wheel. I got it so hot using the stone wheel and the sander that I had to go drop it in the snow several times. I put it on my belt sander. I hit it. I even put it on the giant grinder that I have, just to get the various striations and indentations and teeth off of this thing. And it was brutal. It took so much effort. I learned a big lesson. I should have annealed it first. And annealing is just when you heat something up and you change its chemical composition, if you will. You soften it essentially. Now it's all it's all ground down. I had not annealed it yet, so going forward, next time I will absolutely anneal it first. But now I'm going to apply the Kiridashi template from the times when I've built them before. It is worth to note, I tried every which way to cut into this rasp. This is my portable bandsaw. That thing cuts into almost anything. Would not cut into the rasp. It doesn't matter. I wasn't even supposed to be up at the top of it here. I was just trying to cut into it. Didn't work. The rasp is so incredibly hard. Looks like I knocked the camera over there. The rasp is so hard that nothing cuts into it. The angle grinder with the cutoff wheel was the only thing that I could seem to get into that and to cut it off. And then once I finally annealed this, it started to behave in a way that was more tolerable for what I was trying to produce. The grinders could still grind off the edges, but next time, I'm telling you, I'm going to anneal that thing right off the bat. Here you go. I'm trying to drill in the beginnings of the hole in the pommel, if you will, of the handle. I couldn't get any drill bit. I probably tried 5 or 6. Could not get them to penetrate at all. So into the forge, this sucker is getting annealed. There are 2 other phases that need to happen to this Kiridashi before I'm done. This is the copper wire that I'm going to wind with it, but as I get it red hot the first time, I'm going to put in my touch mark. And I came to find out after I wrapped it with copper wire, which you're about to see here, I get it red hot, I put a bunch of borax on it, and then I wrap it in copper wire and stick it back in the forge. That literally impregnates this copper into it. It's not just a cladding, it sinks deep down into the steel. I like it a lot. It has a cool effect. So more borax on it, back into the forge, and as you'll see here, I'll show as it starts to heat up to red hot, and the copper melts first, the steel does not. And now, killing 3 birds with 1 stone, I'm going to let this cool on my very, very cold anvil from the hot temperature that you saw all the way to room temperature, and therefore it's going to soften, it's going to be annealed, and it definitely softened up. Now you'll watch, this drill bit goes right in as if it never was a rasp before. I'm going to widen the hole up. I'm going to chamfer it out a little bit, give it a little bit of a beveled edge. Not so much that I could fit a finger into the hole, but probably more so that I could fit a leather cord. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm just taking a lot of time to get that chisel grind profile, if you will. It's only one-sided, and it took a lot of work because I'm removing a lot of material. Now this is my new method, and I'm pretty sure I created this. No one has ever been intelligent enough to make this happen. But mounting any sort of blades, I'm gonna start doing this from now on. My electric file that I have here, it's made for sharpening, and it does a really, really good job. And here is the final version. Notice those fish scale looks to it. I like that. I wanted to keep that in there. And then on the other side, little bit of rasp left at the tip. I like that too. It's just such a small blade that, yeah, it cuts really well. It was very, very sharp, but as with a lot of things, it could always be a little bit sharper. Now, I decided I wanted to make a case, if you will. I have this piece of black walnut, and I think it's pine, that I glued up a long time ago for something. I don't know what it is. I keep a lot of those cutoffs that I have. I know at some point I'll use them for a pommel, for a handle, for something decorative. This was about perfect for me to use for a little case, kind of a open-ended scabbard, sort of like an open-faced sandwich. This is an open-faced scabbard. So what I'm going to do here is I'm drawing out the profile that I'm going to cut out. One of these edges is a live edge. I'm going to keep it that way. But once I get it to the shape that I want to, I'm going to go ahead and route out the rest of it with my router. Probably about a little over a 1/16 in depth. Actually, I'm sorry, a little over an 1/8 in depth, so that the Kiridashi can sit within this little case. I'm going to implant some magnets in there, which you're going to see here in a second. I think it's always probably wise to have several rare earth magnets laying around, so that you can use them for this, that, and the other. This had different sizes. They are pretty strong, but I made a mistake, and that is I sank the holes into this particular case a little bit too deeply, and then when I put epoxy in there, it covered up the magnets a little bit too much. They weren't as strong as I wanted them to be, and they're actually pretty strong magnets, so I think that was just my fault. As any craftsman knows, inattention to detail can really cost you. This was my fault completely. I pulled the router out a little bit too soon. It caught an edge and it snapped that. That said, I knew there was a crack in that black walnut. I was trying not to exasperate that crack and make it worse, but it ended up cracking. Probably a good thing, because it would have cracked, I think, in long term anyways, as this case. So here I am. I'm putting the epoxy on it. I'm getting it sandwiched to back up. And at the same time, I'm putting 3 rare earth magnets in there. 2 for the side that's going to hang the case onto your refrigerator, so to speak, and then 1 for the side that's going to hold the actual Kiridashi itself. Don't judge me with the Skittles wrapper. That was my daughter's Skittles that I stole from them. But listen, a man has needs. Couple more final touches to the profile of the inner side of this casing before I sand it off. I'm using this incredibly old chisel that I got somewhere, and I'm really grateful, because it's so fun to keep have old tools retain a life and be able to use them. And chisels, as we're making with the Kiridashi, they can stay with you a long time. One of the viewers mentioned that I should try a dispenser for my woes with painter's tape. So I gave it a try, and I'm kind of intrigued with it. I was going to stain the black walnut here. I was going to make it darker. So I'm putting a piece of tape on to make sure that... Wait a second, I put it on the wrong side. I will never speak of this again. Somehow I still blame painter's tape, for it just gets me off my game. And even though it's on a dispenser, I want to make it very clear. Look at how it mocks me still. Okay, the goal was to darken the already dark black walnut, and by doing so, I was applying walnut colored stain to black walnut, which feels really, really weird and kind of ironic to me, but it did darken it. And then I take the tape off because I want to look at that pine. It's kind of a heartwood pine. It's got a really cool grain to it, but the tape didn't work. It just bled right on over. So I go ahead and apply the rest of the stain to it, brush it off. It looks pretty good. I like it. A little clear coat, and it'll look great. And here is the final product. The case, the Kiridashi with those really cool fish scales look to it. I like it. Well, thank you for joining me for that build. I like the way that build turned out. The final product is good. It looks good with those scales from the rasp on one side. It looks really interesting to me. All right, straight in. My takeaways are this. A rasp is extremely hard. I knew that files are hard. but man, that rasp must be the hardest piece of metal that I have ever tinkered with. I thought it was really telling and really interesting how I could not get a saw to cut into that rasp. I could not get a drill bit to cut into it. But when I annealed it and I got it up to red hot and then let it cool, the drill bit went right through it. The saws cut right into it. It's amazing, those chemical reactions, they just amaze me. I also thought it was really neat how when I melted the copper onto it, that side that looks like fish scales, those little indentations, they pulled the copper into them, and now it has this sort of smooth but still scaled coppery look to it. I think that's pretty cool. So I've made a few of these before. I've always sent them to people as gifts, and this is going to be a gift as well. I'm going to gift it to someone that I work with. He is a co-worker, but in a lot of ways he's also kind of a mentor. I tell him he's a walking TED Talk. He's an analytic, he's a brilliant guy, he's a compassionate guy, and he is a maker as well. So this is gonna be a gift for him. I'm gonna surprise him with it and just mail it to him. He doesn't know that it's coming. So Alan, when you get this, I hope that you like it. So that's it for me for this week. Next week, I'm gonna begin a commission that I received to make a pair of what are called sabatons. Sabatons are the armor that goes onto the foot in medieval warfare. It's that articulated, almost lobster tail looking thing that you see covering knights' feet. But it gets a little trickier. It's not just any old sabaton. It's just so happened that the lady who reached out to me and commissioned this has a full suit of Lord of the Rings Nazgul Witch King armor. She's got the helmet, she's got the sword, she's got some other things. The only thing she doesn't have is the gauntlets and the sabatons. I told her I wasn't good enough to make the gauntlets, but I'm gonna try to make these sabatons from a picture that she sent me on my phone. It's gonna be a heck of a challenge. I'm looking forward to it. Until then, have a great week. God bless.